directly teach here from Singapore to the value wall, and to minimize risk, I said we split it in half. I will give you about 10-15 minutes at the beginning, and if nothing works, then Matthias Stadtfest, who will be the other teacher today, will continue. I hope you can see the big display.
I have no idea how Danny did this.
Next screen.
Can you, the overlay, we just need to see it as it should be. Yeah, the slides. Yeah, we are trying it, yeah. You need to load his slides. Yeah, but we need to do the other stream. No. We need to show his stream. His stream, yes. Yes. Can you make it bigger? Yeah.
Okay, right. So, today we are already in the 8th lecture, and it's on some flows of people and information. And as you can see, we split between myself and Matthias Stadtfest, who is a PhD student here at the chair. The content will be on people and information, of course, and first I will start with a brief introduction of exercise 3 and urban system design, and then Matthias Stadtfest will go into people and information and focus mainly on social media and big data. When you look at the flow of the semester, you can see we are expanding now from the medium scale of design already a little bit into the large scale, which will be the last parts of the entire lecture in the following weeks. And within that medium and large scale, we focus on space, on people, and information as starts and close today. Let me start with the exercise 3. Thank you for handing in your second exercise. I haven't seen them yet, but I'm very curious how they turned out. And as a preparation for today's lecture and for you to prepare in time, let me give you the introduction to the exercise. It is an exercise on the territorial scale, because territories contain cities, cities contain buildings, but they do not form a hierarchical system, because the interaction between buildings influences the city as much as the interaction between cities influences the territory. Territories interact with cities in urban systems, if you consider them as entities with a metabolism, and that they are functioning in the analogy to the stars and flows model. The exercise 3, we are interested that you define and find so-called non-urban information cities. You may ask yourself, what is this? In the past, there were very strong boundaries between the city and the environment around it, but these boundaries are evolving very quickly, and we have a very ubiquitous distribution of information technology, particularly the mobile phone and its associated services. Matthias Stadtfest will tell you more about this soon. The exercise has 3 parts. The first one is to identify and describe 2 attractive non-urban, non-city settlements which nevertheless show characteristics of an urban settlement. Either in your vicinity, anywhere you know it, in your vicinity where you come from, where you live now, or other places that you might not be familiar with in terms of living there, but that you know very well from literature. The second part is to identify and describe the most important starts and flows that you think are entering, staying in, and eventually leaving this area. Is it money, or is it different parts of information, or is it material? What are these starts and flows? The third part is to describe 2 approaches how buildings in urban sprawl areas could be transformed from a perceived liability into an asset for the resilience of future cities. You know, many people are talking about urban sprawl as something very negative and something that is not having a future, but maybe with new technology that might completely turn around and change again. So these are the 3 parts. It's due on December 1st, and I think you will have fun doing that. If you have been there in this area, a typical example for this third exercise would be the island of Java or northern India. So if you look those up, then you can see immediately what I mean. So that is the exercise 3. And then we come now very briefly to the urban system design. This is something we didn't get to last lecture, but it's a very good introduction for today's lecture on people and information. The ultimate goal of modeling, simulation, and projection is design with regard to urban planning. Design is situated outside of science and outside of art, but building on discoveries in both areas. Urban system design is special that it connects architectural design and territorial design. Informed and responsible parent, system design builds on information and knowledge derived from modeling, simulation, and projection. It's a new discipline, and it is situated between the naturally and slowly growing cities, such as, for example, Zurich, again now, between geometrically predefined cities, and between arbitrary growth, which is your exercise 3. The foundation should be threefold, 3 pillars. First one, the ability to understand. That's what we're trying in the course right now. The second one, that the information can be placed in and interact with the urban system model. The third one is projection of various possibilities and the creation of design scenarios that can be discussed with the stakeholders and decision makers in an environment, for example, that you are in now, in this value wall or in the value lab. I give you 3 examples to think about: Chandigarh, Brasilia, and Shenzhen. Chandigarh, if you remember, was in the 1950s that the Swiss architect went there with Corbusier, and he said, let's design a city. He was, of course, invited. He spent time there with his design team, and within a very short time, they designed and put down on paper the city, which was then constructed in the following years. It turned out very different than it was planned. He was not from India, he was from Switzerland and France. Brasilia is the second example in the 1960s, directly connected to the work of Oscar Niemeyer, of course, and to the president of Brazil at this time, Kubitschek. It could be described as one of the first system design attempts, as it tried to integrate the human, the architectural, the political, the planning, and the infrastructure needs of a future cities. Niemeyer was a native of Brazil, so we should have known, he knew much more about the country, but still, the city has developed very differently from what he originally invented and intended. And Shenzhen is the third example. It's the newest one, which has grown from a very small city the size of Luzern, as I mentioned to you before, to more than 15 million people today, without a big scheme of architectural urban design and urban planning. Here are 3 examples of this. You see Chandigarh, Corbusier's building, one of the most important buildings in this city. You can see how it has been done in concrete, how it has been done very carefully, external sun shading, a very, very delicate and also beautiful design. It has been in use since that time, has been reused in many parts of it, and these buildings are functioning very well, whereas the overall city layout has experienced a completely different history than was intended. Second example, Brasilia, and this is just one of the buildings on this long avenue. When you look down the long avenue, you find this at the end on the right side, the Palace of Justice, which is still very, very important and in use. Many of the functions of Brasilia are exactly in use as they were 50 years ago, but the residential part of the city has developed in a very different way. So the official functions are more or less used in the way it was intended, but the people functions, where people live, how they live, and how they interact with each other, has been developing differently. And finally, Shenzhen, as I showed before, you can actually see the flow of information from this part of the original landscape, which is still visible, into the city to be used either as a building material or just to make place for the next high-rise buildings. And you can see the extreme densification, but also the attempt to conserve some areas, like in the front left, for green space and for some recreational space. And this process is ongoing, as I showed you a few lectures ago. So if you compare these three approaches, I think you get a good understanding what urban system design is. The discussion of the definition of system, it is a set of objects acting together as part of a whole. In the urban context, a system contains buildings, infrastructure, landscape, water, and other elements as its parts. Taken together and adding their individual behavior and multiple interactions, they form a complex system. Complex systems theory is an important field of science. Its findings are applied to many areas, including urbanization. One of the most famous complex systems places in the world is the Santa Fe Institute, and its director, previous director, Geoffrey West, he's a leading complex systems theorist. He's a physicist, and you can see he explains the complex systems, properties of it. They have many components, many individual factors, agents, multi-spatial and temporal scales, strongly coupled interacting, non-linear, sensitivity to boundary conditions, emergent phenomena, multiple places, and so on. This is exactly what cities are, and therefore the work of the Santa Fe Institute is so important. At the same time, and that goes now straight into what Matthias Standfest will tell you next, today it's not so clear anymore how these urban systems develop. With the three examples I gave you at the beginning, Chandigarh, and then Brasilia, and then Shenzhen, it seems as he could start by clear planning. But here, Geoffrey West writes himself, today companies like Google, which have grown up in an era of massively abundant data, don't have to set for raw models. Indeed, they don't have to settle for models at all. It's a fight between models and data. And he keeps saying, out with every theory of human behavior, from linguistics to sociology, forget taxonomy and ontology and psychology. Who knows why people do what they do? The point is, they do it. And we can track and measure it with unprecedented fidelity. With enough data, the numbers speak for themselves. So this is a very interesting contradiction and juxtaposition towards the very structured planning of city as we saw it in these two examples before, and maybe leads away into the future. How that would look like, this I give now the word to Matthias Standfest, and I thank you for your attention so far. Let me just see if everything I said approached you or arrived at your place. Can you switch around and give me a view of you? Okay, seems they're still there. Can you give a sign of hand if you have understood how the quality of the transmission was? Could you understand it well? Could you see it well? Okay, good. So now let's turn it around and see what Standfest has to say. Matthias Standfest.
Yeah. So hello everybody. Can you close the small window too? Or put it behind? Okay, perfect. So today I'm talking about stocks and flow, and especially about the importance of people and information in this whole concept. And in order to understand what's going on right now, this one is not working. So. I have the keyboard. Okay, it's just taking longer than expected. I'd like to start over 100 years ago. So in August 1902, the first telephone landline between Berlin and Paris was opened. So this was the start from the European telephone network. And this is really important because what happened after this network was opened is really comparable to what you're facing right now. So first of all, we had some social impacts of those telephone lines. So the communication was closer. There was communication possible that wasn't possible before, and it was this easy to do. So quite fast, economy and social life adapted to this new kind of situation. And I think these are really two important quotes. And the first one is, the invention of the telephone led to the development of city centers, office buildings, and the concept of an urban work society. So the way we think a city today, with a core, with its suburbs around, this was a direct response to the telephone. This didn't happen this easily or this much before. And that's how we anticipate the city nowadays. The second one is it allows social decentralization, resulting in a movement out of cities and more flexible work arrangements. It's changing marketing and politics. So you see, there are three parts. 100 years with the effect of this hardwired telephone. Right? So this is really far from high-tech. It was high-tech 100 years ago. But imagine the power of it. I mean, it was just by the separation of white and blue-collar work. We were able, the society was able to develop office buildings and therefore develop densification and suburbs. So, I mean, from an urban developer perspective, this is really a big gap. And from a more social perspective, there was a response to this time. We have the analytic cubism. It was the first stage of cubism. And this is a famous picture with a violin. And this is how Picasso and Braque, 100 years ago, responded to the idea that you can see one thing from multiple perspectives at once. So they lived in a different time. The thing is, there are lots of other inventions of the time for connecting the world. You have to imagine a planet where airplanes just started, Zeppelins started. You had photography coming up, and many, many other things at this time, just about connecting people, making this communication easier. And in the end, this communication is just a transfer of knowledge. So this is the story of stocks and flows. I mean, you have knowledge on the one hand, and you want to transmit this knowledge. And this is this information channels. This is the bandwidth. And with a small shift in this network, and with this increase from what was before, you had letters, you had this postal stuff, you had Morse code. I mean, with this increase in speed and bandwidth, suddenly a totally different world appeared. And nowadays, we're at the same stage. So maybe this gives us some ideas. Because when you compare telephone to the internet, to the ubiquitous communication tools we have nowadays, it's like comparing charcoal to electricity. I mean, 100 years ago, we were heating with charcoal most of the time. It was, and you had to transfer it on a physical stage. You know, you had all of this physically used small bandwidth transport systems. And now we have electricity. All we need are some cables in order to get heat, in order to get information, in order to get knowledge. And the big point now is we have it in real time. There is no delay in it anymore. And we have ubiquitous communication. So you have it there all the time in your hands, and it's almost free available. So there are no limitations in this anymore. 100 years ago, a telephone, this was a really expensive device, and you had to go somewhere, and not everybody had access to it. And that's this availability thing. And just to imagine this, I mean, nowadays on the Earth, more people have access to a mobile phone than to a toilet or a toothbrush. I mean, that's this UN report, and it says 4.8 billion people have access to a mobile phone. I mean, imagine 4.8 people, 4.8 billion people. This is an amazing number. And this is especially important for all the developing countries, because there's this system called mobile money. I mean, look at Africa. In Africa, you don't have these bank systems. I mean, these bank systems you need ATMs, you need banks, you need all the way of transferring the money in a really difficult way. You need the possibility of storing this physical money, and this physical money we grew up with. they skip this stage. Now you have mobile money. When you have your mobile device, you have your mobile phone, and it's just by the SIM card they have like a grassroots banking systems. So you can transfer money and you can receive money. For the first time, they can now save money. They are just skipping a step. And this is due to the physical impact. This is a direct result of mobile phones and mobile devices. And there are other use case scenarios for this. I mean, this is not just having this availability. This is not just about money. I mean, now there's this X Prize. They have this. They are spending lots of research into using these mobile devices into to improving the health systems over there. And it's not just over there. I mean, what are we using those mobile devices for? These communication things. I mean, WhatsApp, Instagram, or whatever, or Facebook. In the end, so we have this constant flow of knowledge, this constant flow of information, and not just information, but every other thing. So this is the shift from this physical way of transporting things to an electronic way of transporting things. And this electronic way we don't need cables or wire anymore. I mean, we just use high-frequency Wi-Fi's or satellite communication. And the indirect result of this movement is that all of this electronic information, this is not volatile like the telephone calls before. Now we can record everything, and we do record everything. So if you look at Google has 10 exabytes of data. So this is a billion of terabytes, to imagine this. And they are storing everything. They are storing every mouse click, every second you spend on a page, every piece of information you look a little bit longer is marked and flagged. And that's just Google. I mean, you have this much more intense with Facebook. You have it with Microsoft. And not spoken of NSA and all those other governmental stuff. So everything is recorded. And this is the cool thing about it, because now we have this third party. We can work with this data. We can have statistics. We can look into who is communicating with whom and why. So why are you sharing this picture of the food? Or when you're when you're messaging somebody that you go to the pool or you're outside, so we can do this whole behavioral patterns on the city. This is all more or less crowdsourced. It's like democracy, but on a second level and on a 2.0 level, because we are sharing some parts of our private behavior in order to improve some things, some civil life, some urban life. This big data, it allows us new perspectives. We're not limited to the small resources we had before. So we can now play around with new statistical methods. And with these new statistical methods, we can find out much better things, much more interesting things. So my most favorite examples on this whole story is the movie Moneyball. I mean, I don't know, has anyone seen of you this movie with Brad Pitt? It's about baseball and a baseball manager. And what they did is, this Brad Pitt is this manager of a baseball team, and they don't have money. They don't have enough money to get in the playoffs and to play in the big league. Let's call it this way. So he needed a new way of finding good players, affordable players. And what he did is he worked with a statistics guy, and the usual way was to count how many hits baseball a guy is doing, how many runs is he doing, and all on this intrinsic way of describing a person. So are you fast? Are you healthy? Are you in a good relationship? All of this mattered to this baseball managers before. And he shifted this perspective. So for him it wasn't important, is this a good player? But how is this player working, getting along with other players? So how is this information flow working out? And they found a way of buying really cheap players. They didn't work well as an individual, but you work really quite well as a group, and they manage to get in the playoffs. And that's not just a movie, that's a real story. And it's now called sabermetrics, and this is a science, and they do it. They're not just doing it in baseball, they're doing it everywhere else. And this is just a way of shifting a perspective. What big data does is it allows us not just to shift it by once, to do one new way of statistical thinking. It allows us to try all of the ways of statistical thinking. So we can try all the models out, and we can look for the one which fits best. And the most important quote on this matter is from Box, and he says that, in the end he just says that, how wrong can a model be to still be useful? So all the models, the statistical models we are using are wrong eventually, but there is this time span when they are really useful and we can work with them. And that's big data in the end. And IBM is using this stuff for Smarter Cities program. So they are looking into social programs, public safety, buildings, water, transportation, everything, and they are improving the urban life this way, and they are looking and they're giving the planner and the managers some data inputs, and where's the city more or less ill or sick, or where are the problems you need to fix, and on the other hand, how to fix them and how to supervise them. But can you imagine at the moment of other possible applications of this big data stuff? I mean, is any one of you, do you have some knowledge, do you have some idea on what to do with this idea, with this way of thinking? So maybe, just as an inspiration, I mean, go to medicine. Now you don't know how some pharmaceutical product is working out, so you have to study it. You have the test groups, and you study it for some side effects, and it's the same with architecture. So nowadays, right now, we don't know how our buildings, how our designs are affecting the city, but we can look into it. And how powerful this big data stuff is, for example, the Google Translator. I mean, usually to understand a language and to transfer it from one language to another, you had to know all the vocabulary, and you had to know all the grammatics behind it. So therefore, we had these linguists, and this is really complicated, and it's much harder to do this real-time translation. And Google did some statistics. So what they did, they are indexing all the UN texts, so all the legislation of the United Nations, and it's translated, I think, in over 120 languages, and they scanned it. And one text should always be the same like in the other language. And therefore, they were able to do this Google Translator. And you don't have rule sets, you don't know what a word is meaning, but you just do some correlations, and they found out, yeah, well, it's working. It's not working perfectly, but it's a very good approximation. And we are using it. I mean, at least I use it when I have to check some Chinese websites, for example. I mean, I have no idea of Chinese, but if I'm looking for some electronic parts, I need to get some information. So this big data stuff is like identification of the knowledge. It's identification of the information we have, and it's making it much more powerful. And we can use it for architecture. One of the possible new design tasks is, for example, the Bilbao effect. I mean, you know of this building, this Guggenheim Museum, and Bilbao was this broken down city. They had no money left. The people were moving away. And they started with this big fancy museum. And for the first time, or for one of the first times, they started this gentrification process. Because they had culture, the new creative class, the so-called creative class, moved there, and they created jobs. And when they created jobs, more people moved there. And now Bilbao is working out quite well. But it was just one small design element that's changed the whole dynamics of the city. Of course, they were lucky. I mean, they tried it in other cities after this, and it didn't work out the way it worked out in Bilbao. But why did it work out there? So we should, if we take a closer look into it and we could understand the dynamics, or at least we could copy these dynamics, we could try to apply some Bilbao effects on other cities. The second big task is the densification of functions. This is really, again, an old school example. This is Paris, over 100 years ago, and it was Haussmann who did, under Napoleon, the whole redesign of the city. And yeah, it was for more light, more air, and you all know the story, but it also had military goals. So Napoleon wanted to have streets for his police and his military forces. If there is any revolution, he could fight them much faster in this new city layout. And there were these two wholly different goals to achieve. So more the civilian aspects, and on the other hand, the military aspects. And you had to find one design approach so you could combine those two ideas into one modification of the city. And that's the same we are facing now, because in order to densify the city life, we have to densify the functionality of the city. So if you have a park, for example, and the park has to serve now multiple ideas. So it has to be for sports, it has to be for elderly people, it has to be for young families. And it's the same for sports centers. They have to serve, now it's not just a sports center anymore. You have the concerts in the sports center. And you have this for more buildings. So, and these are, quite fast today. These are the potentials we are looking for. Because in this big data-driven urban design, it's not about doing this master plan anymore. It's about looking for potentials, and it's about working with them. So, for example, we have these gentrification processes. The whole idea of gentrification is just working out because we have this faster dynamics in communication. I mean, we know now with Facebook, we know on the next day if there's a new gig, if there's a new bar in town, if there's a new nice place. I mean, here in Zurich, look at the Kaltbreite station. I mean, they started with the new Kaltbreite station. There are, I think, in a time span of 4 or 5 weeks, there started like 3 bars around it. Not in direct contact to the building, but just because there were now new people there. We have evidence-based design. So known for medicine, now we're looking into examples from old urban development programs or designs. And we can, with the big data underneath, we can evaluate if the design was successful or if the design didn't work out in the end. And therefore we need this big data, because we can look, are the people moving, are the people more happy, are the people more healthy, what do they earn? And so we can evaluate how urbanism is working out now. And that's evidence-based design. Because when we find good designs, we can copy them. And we can, if we detect bad designs, we can avoid them. And therefore, architecture is becoming rather medical. So we are looking into the city like an organic metabolism again. And it's not like Corbusier did as a living machine. It's like this living organism we are in, this swarm. And we can look into problems or illnesses or sicknesses this organism has, and we can cure it more or less. And as I told before, we have this densification of functions. We can combine different goals with one building or with one design approach. So one building can really has this enormous big impact. So we can change whole quarters just by a right building. And I think this is going to be what big data is going to be about in architecture. And just to see what's going on now, like Professor Schmidt told you before, now we have this non-urban process like in northern India or in Java. I'd like to quote a sociology report. Recently, in developed countries, sociologists, I can't spell it.
Sociologist.
Thank you. Have observed suburbanization and counter-urbanization, or movement away from cities, which may be driven by transportation infrastructure or social factors like racism. And so there we have some kind of non-urban densification, and here we have this urban sprawl. But from an ecologic or economic perspective, this is more or less nonsense, because we need densification in order to use less materials, to use less energy. We need denser cities. And designing triggers for these densification processes, I think this is going to be the big task of the new century. But that's my humble opinion. But this is something we could do with big data. So we could look for correlations, we could look for movement patterns, we could look for communication patterns. And with all of these things going on, we can detect where something working out well, where something not working out well. And we should focus on those problem fields. And we can, these problematic quarters, we can improve them. And I'm sure that those with money, I'm going to do it. And now I'd like to ask you, which other effects of architecture we could trigger? I mean, is there anything you could think of? I mean, for example, we had a colleague, he was working on this project to increase the health of a city by improving the way pedestrians can move in it. Because the more you walk, probably the healthier you become. So you can increase the lifespan of its inhabitants just by big data, by the use of big data for the city. Is there anything you can think of? I mean, maybe you should, because, well, this is coming. And as I see, I'm much faster, it's just 25 minutes. But if there are any questions, I'm happy, because we have a little time, to answer them. What this is? Please, yeah.
Well, if you can sort of trigger every flaw in the city, or if you can trigger every disease, with the big data, and you can apply an answer to that, or you can cure it, as you said.
Yeah, you can try to, yeah.
Is it not that with this big data structure, that everything in the end becomes the same?
No.
Because you know, an alley where people walk through in a certain part of the city, which is maybe potential for shops or something like that, is now being triggered. But maybe these alleys then get all the time these same solutions from the people with the money, or so you mix up the whole city in a way, like all the skills.
Yeah, it is a good question, because one of the core ideas behind big data is like in the Moneyball movie. So the city is not, this alley is just a single player in the team, more or less. And if the alley is, if it's not important that the alley is perfect. It's just about how is the alley working out in the whole context of the city. And you don't, I'm not this good in baseball, but I think you don't need a team full of pitchers. So you have different tasks, and you can see, so in this city you need one shopping alley, or in this city you need the living quarters should be somehow more green or whatever. And then the overall concept is working out better. You can sharpen its profile. You can sharpen the profile of the individual parts. And it's always about the context in big data. It's always about the context in design.
Yeah, well, I don't know. With this again, you also need parts of the city which are not visible, and you make everything visible with big data. Anyway, so because you start to map the city, so then you know all these alleys and the part of the alley in the team. But then, because the city reacts to that, maybe the alley then becomes more sort of densified.
Yeah.
So then you lose this skill.
Yeah. Then probably it's fit for something for a different task then, because we are always just then we need a different alley. We need to look which other part of the city would work best to do this nice kind of alley, and then we need to modify this. So it's always, that's why the city keeps changing, and that's why this communication flow is important. Because we need to get rid of this static idea of the city. The city is always changing, it's always moving.
Right. I have another comment from Singapore.
Yeah, we can hear you.
I find this discussion really fascinating because this is the real discussion that's going on also in practice. And although Matthias Schramm has said the words densify, cities have to densify, everything else is nonsense, this is exactly the important or interesting point. Because some people claim maybe it's not possible. And you as architectural students, you always have to think of the other possibility. The whole discussion on big data is leading to a point where so much is evidence-driven and evidence-determined that in the end you might not have any more room to think or to move. And that's why we want to get you in this third exercise to really think not out of the box, but out of the city, literally out of the city. All the nice things that Matthias was showing you what is possible today with this technology, maybe it can be used to solve this density problem in a completely different way.
Exactly.
Maybe it cannot be solved by evidence, because we have no evidence for this before. And that is where your design capabilities and your design ideas come in. That's why I'm very, very curious how you will solve this third exercise.
Are there any more questions? Something you want to...
Just as a designer or as an architect, how do you find or access this information? Because the examples you gave were mostly private companies that hold this information, and for me it's sort of the other side of this coin, is you're selling it as some public utility, we can make the cities better, when really it's information which has a price and which is profitable to companies more than it is to society often.
This is especially for me as a researcher, is the big problem at the moment. For example, I'm now in a research project where we start to do this, to do the public approach to this stuff. So we have these pedestrians with sensor backpacks and movie cameras, more or less like this Google Street View, but on a high resolution, geographically highly tagged. So this is high quality data you as an architect could use. And this is coming now. So what we're talking about now is it's not just cutting edge, that's bleeding edge. So it's really, that's what the future is bringing. So we have hopefully the new Future Cities Lab in Singapore is at least our part of it, is about big data in urban design. And this is now the trend for the next 10 years or so. But it's coming. And it's just what we want, what you need now are new ideas. Because I mean, the ideas we need now, and later we have the data and we can combine it. But it's about thinking in a different perspective. And as Professor Schmidt told you before, maybe you don't need this evidence-based approach at the moment because there are no evidences left. I mean, are yet to gain. It's about the new designs. And if we could see architecture more as an experiment or like as a medical study, now we create some projects, some small projects, and later we gather the information, is it working or not? So it's more of this way of thinking. Yeah.
Okay. I think we should stop here. Time is almost over. And I thank you for listening and for this very interesting discussion at the end. Next week, I will be back in Zurich, and I look forward to discuss with you the results of your second exercise, also go a bit deeper in the third exercise, and we will continue our structure close discussion, but now then on the scale of, the large scale of the territory of which every city is a part of, and to explore this urban-rural system within a given territory. So I'm looking forward to see you next week in person again. I have to go to Beijing in the meantime on Wednesday, and I'll be back on Saturday. And have a very good week. Thank you, and bye-bye from Singapore.
Bye.